Chair.
All right, so I'm looking for a motion and a second to pass our no, we don't have a modification, so I'm going to keep going. I apologize. Let's see, do we have any public comments? Instructions on how to provide public comment is included in our agenda.
No, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Before we dig in, do we have any comments from our members of our executive committee? All right, and I have none myself, so we'll move right into our action items. The first action item, 2A, is an amendment to the TPA Executive Director contract, and we're going to ask Milton Collins, our TPA legal counsel, to present on this item. Good afternoon, sir.
Oh, good afternoon, committee. It's a rather intimate setting here. I do like it. Hope all is doing well. And as you noted, my name is Milton Collins. I serve as the committee and the board's human resources consultant, and also I'm a partner of Paul's at the firm. So pleasure to meet all of you. And so as part of my role as human resources consultant, I do monitor the employment agreements for all of my clients, including this client. And I had a tickler for this particular agreement because it's in the final year of this 3-year contract. And as you know, committee, there is a 2-year renewal, but that is not automatic. It does require affirmative action by the committee to sort of renew the agreement. In any case, taking a look at the agreement sort of in toto, I did sort of fixate on the duration, particularly this issue of the 3-year contract and the 2-year renewal. It's really uncommon when it comes to these agreements to sort of have this finite end date. Typically in an employment agreement, you have either successive renewals or you just have just one standalone duration clause that addresses the person's employment going forward. And so I wanted to really just bring this matter to the committee's attention, and really I wanted to present you with 2 options concerning the executive director's employment agreement. And option 1, and that's in your packet, what I've drafted is a 3-year agreement with successive 3-year renewals, which are automatic unless the board or the committee decides to do something else. And the second option is a no duration clause. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a rationale for that second option. As you know, the director serves at the pleasure of the TPA, and therefore she's at will. So whether the contract has 5-year duration, 10-year, 20-year duration, it really doesn't matter because she can be terminated at any time at the pleasure of the TPA. And so I've been seeing this sort of as a trend where we have a lot of public sector entities that are looking at a no duration clause. And I'll editorialize just a little bit as to my experience when it comes to these successive contracts versus a no duration contract. And so when it comes to these successive renewal contracts, obviously you do have the option not to renew. And I've, over the years, have experienced a lot of issues when it comes to this option of not renewing the contract. In essence, if you don't renew a contract, you are in essence terminating that employee. And over the years, what I've noticed is that whenever an entity has exercised its option not to renew an agreement, it's caused a lot of tumult in the agency. The reason being is you're sort of explaining or telling that person that we no longer have your confidence and we are moving a different direction, yet that person really has to remain on for a number of months. Oftentimes, my client comes to me in the middle of this intervening period and they say, is there a way we can expedite this? We want to move on fast. We don't want to wait 3 months or 4 months or whatever the case may be. And so over the years, I've seen somewhat of an issue when it comes to this option of having a duration of the contract and exercising your right not to renew it. And instead, what I've been recommending more lately is just to not have a duration to the contract. The executive director does serve at the pleasure of the board. And so at any time you don't believe she's a good fit, then you may exercise your right to terminate the director. So that's sort of the rationale for giving you 2 options. Certainly, it is less of a legal option or legal issue as to what option you select. But nevertheless, I wanted to give you 2 options just for your consideration. And if you have any questions regarding these 2 options, Any legal issues, please let me know. One of the issues that have come up that I listened to the last meeting had to do with if you do decide to not renew a contract, does the executive director have a right to a severance? That issue has been a matter of case law over the past maybe 5 to 10 years. There have been arguments made that if you do not renew a contract, you are in essence terminating that employee, and therefore they would ask for severance. When I look at this particular agreement, I do think the agreement adequately covers the board insofar as the director would not get severance if you decided not to renew the contract, but it is not 100% clear. What would make it 100% clear is to say in the event, for example, it would say in the event you decide to exercise that provision, the director shall not be eligible for severance pay. That would be clear and unambiguous, and there would be no issue. But as I noted, even though you have that option to exercise your right to let the agreement expire, I do think that there are some intangible issues when it comes to doing that. And so that's sort of my overview of the matter. And if you have any questions, please feel free to direct them either to me or to Paul.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, I'll bring it to the board. So we're in a smaller group. I don't feel like we need to have cards up necessarily, but I do look forward to some sort of a conversation. If anyone has anything they'd like to say, feel free to speak up or ask questions or.
Sure. Milton raised the issue that I had, which is about severance, because if there's no term and a board decides to let the executive director go without cause, you have to pay severance.
Mhm.
If it's a 3-year renewal and at some point they decide not to renew, you can terminate the contract without having to pay severance. And I think it's in the best interest of the board that if for some reason there's a future occurrence where they want to go in a different direction, they shouldn't be locked into paying severance. If they want to agree to terminate earlier and pay severance for that, I think that's a better idea. But I do think that solely for the reason of having to pay severance on a termination without cause, I think is a reason to have a term that it should automatically renew, because that way there's not every year we have to vote on the contract. It should automatically renew. But I do think having a term in there allows for an eventual parting of the ways without having to pay severance, whether it's this board or. Yes.
Everyone just turn
Automatic
your mics
renewals.
on. Like, fine.
Sorry, I couldn't,
It's
that-
off. Don't print.
I couldn't hear you. You said you are in for putting in a term
Correct. 3-year
Okay.
term that would automatically renew.
that automatically renew. Okay, gotcha.
Because I don't want to have it come up every cycle. to
No,
vote on
I
it,
agree.
But I think it should automatically renew, because if there's a reason that we wouldn't want to continue, we would raise it.
Right, gotcha.
And if we have to build in language to say that if the contract expires without renewal, no severance is due, we should put that in, because to me, that would be the whole point of having a term in there. So if it doesn't renew,
I guess
not
my
severance.
question is, where is the severance on the second option? Because I didn't see that part.
There's no severance written into the second option.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Milton,
Sev-
and I'm sorry, just to clarify, in the backup, option A is the no term, option B is the 3-year term.
So you had it up.
Oh,
I think we had it.
Had
yeah,
it,
just in
okay,
case.
other way around.
Okay.
Milton, do you have a comment?
I do. When it comes to severance versus no severance, because you have to give the director notice 90 days. In fact, the proposal before you is 120-day notice. That is in essence a severance. I mean, obviously they are still working, but for the next 90 days or 120 days, that person is still being paid, although they are at least providing work for you. But at least I wanted to highlight that for you.
Microphone, microphone, Christy.
Sorry.
No, it's just, you can just leave it on.
can leave
I
it
think
on,
we're going to be
just that.
conversational today.
We being
Go
rehabbed.
for it.
Okay, sorry. So back to the severance, when you're talking about the 60 days or 90 days, whatever you said.
120.
120 days.
120. Okay.
And the B.
That is for with cause or without cause or both?
That's without cause.
Okay.
Option B, I think, right? Option B, yeah.
I guess what I'm not clear about is you're saying that it's more standard to not have terms anymore, to just because she's serving at will to the board, that essentially we can terminate her. without at any time, so that the contract is kind of a moot point.
I'm saying that's becoming a trend, but no, the more common option is the option of the successive renewals.
A 3-year term. With
yes,
the renewal.
The renewal, automatic renewal.
May I ask a question? Do you guys have another question? Because the chair usually asks last, but I just figured since we're chatting. we might-
Okay. I'm thinking-
So comparative to other MPO directors in our state, do you have any idea what it looks like for their terms?
It does vary. We did take a sampling of at least the independent MPOs, and they do have these renewals, automatic renewals.
Automatic
although
renewal.
I believe there's 1 or 2 that have a no term.
A no term. Yeah, I'm like, I think one of the ones in the south. Yeah, Broward doesn't
Mm.
have one. All right. And then the auto renewal is 3 years, generally speaking, for the other independent MPOs.
I think it varies.
Mhm.
That's typically.
Average. Okay, thank you. Excellent.
And your mic went out. Sorry.
Oops.
First I wanted it slow.
Okay, yes.
We have to
Yeah, so
take-
3-year average.
So to just recap, it'll be a 3 years and it renews automatically, but there's always, if there's a parting of ways, then there is still a severance in place because there's a notice that has to be done, even if it's with or without cause. Am
If we
I?
want it, if it's a 3-year term and we elect to terminate without cause, then we have to pay severance, correct? If we terminate with cause on a term, there is no severance because
Okay.
it's with cause.
Correct.
If the contract expires without renewal, there's no severance
Okay.
with your term.
Okay.
If there's no term, then if with cause, there's no severance, but if we terminate without cause, then there's severance. So the advantage to the TPA would be to have a contract that automatically renews every 3 years, because that way, should the TPA ever decide to go in a different direction, they could simply elect to not renew the executive director's contract and not have to pay 6 months of severance.
Yes, that is I guess,
Perfect.
when you sort of drill down to it, that is the issue. Do you want to have this second method of separating the director? Option 1 is just in the middle of
So,
a random month, you would make a motion to terminate versus you would wait till a window period before the expiration where you would say, we don't want to continue this relationship.
yeah, so just because I just went through this for their city manager and obviously you guys are on council for our city and we're going through our city attorney right now. So basically we're parting ways without, there's no cause. It's just we picked a date. We're going in a different direction, but we are having to pay out severance because that's how we're doing it now.
Right.
So that's kind of, and it had a term, so we're able to be like, we're gonna part ways. Here's gonna be your severance. This is a date that you have, and nothing happened, just the council decided we're going in a different direction. So, okay.
And so like I said, just to reiterate, I think one of the issues that I've been wrestling with other clients has to do with the fact that you tell someone 120 days before the expiration of the contract that you won't have a job come 4 months later. That typically the relationship is fractured at that point. And typically, I know Valerie is very professional and she would continue to do her job, but in other places, what I've noticed is that the employee's trying to find another job in that 4-month or 3-month period, or just things aren't working out. So that's the only sort of intangible issue that I wanted to make sure at least the board thought
Well,
about.
certainly, and honestly, I think approaching any of this, I like to depersonalize it anyway. We're talking about any executive
Any,
director.
it's not only.
Because there may not be a committee that has to deal with this again for 20 years, right? So we're really setting this up, not about anyone, not really about us or about her or anything except for just a living, breathing document that future boards can look at if they ever need to. So, I mean, and then the personal point is, I don't think this board's ever going to need to look at this for our current executive director unless she decides to leave us, which I think we would all be mortified. But nonetheless, I do think that this helps with clarity. And I know we all have different situations in our municipalities. Is there anything else that you would want this executive committee to know about the difference between the no duration clause and the 3-year agreement?
Other than the modification of this period of notice before the expiration. Right now, it's a 90-day notice. There is a change to increase that to 120 days. So let's just say let's say you decided with the option to have a duration. You would have to wait at least 4 months before the expiration to let her know this is not working out. We want to proceed. So you would have to
At
you
least
know,
4 months. You can tell
yeah,
her.
at least you can tell,
Say
yes.
that AD a year in. if
That
you're
is
not gonna
true,
Renew
too.
this at the end of the year.
Yes.
You have a year to find another job.
Mhm.
But what happens if you decide you made that decision in year one? I mean, at the end of year one, instead of waiting, I mean, that you're not gonna just say, we're gonna wait for 2 more years. You know, that, what if there wasn't really cause, but just that there was a different, wanted to go a different way, that kind of thing. So then what happens?
That's when the severance would kick in. Again, if you have a 3-year contract and in year one, you just don't like the way things are going. And then you would exercise your right to terminate without cause and the person would be owed the severance.
If you terminate any time prior
Without
to the
cause.
end of the contract,
Okay.
the executive director would get severance.
So.
It gives,
right.
and having a term also gives the executive director some assurity, knowing that even though she's at will, you got 3 years before your contract renews, so you should be safe for 3 years, because otherwise you gotta pay severance if you terminate them earlier, which would be the same without a term.
Okay.
Means that someone, a
them
new board can
for
come in next
severance.
cycle and say, let's change directors.
Paul,
Right.
I think there's an important thing here too, just to underline, and that is, let's say, for instance, that the general hubbub around headquarters here is, we're probably not going to renew the executive director's contract. This would be a successor executive director, not you. Uh,
Hard to not personalize it when you're sitting in the chair we're talking about, so don't take it personally.
But in any event, the hubbub around headquarters, the gossip is that, oh, well, the director's contract is not going to be renewed. And so the board, say 70 days before the end of the 3-year period, decides to officially give notice that they're terminating. What happens?
They would have to, depending on the language of the contract, there would have to be. a
This
date certain.
contract.
Yes, there
Yeah.
would have to be a date certain, 90-day window.
But it would have automatically
severance.
renewed though,
Correct.
if it was,
So they have to
Right.
do it before that window.
yeah.
opens.
And that's the point I'm trying to draw attention to is, oh, the word is we're gonna terminate the director. And then we have a meeting and it's 70 days before the end of the 3-year term. And we take the formal vote to go ahead and say, Mr. Director, you're gone. You're gone. Well, the director then, and by the way, you don't have a right to any severance.
Well, they would. and
Because
that-
we're just gonna let the
It-
contract burn out. But that's not how it works, because the
But they would.
contract would have already renewed
Correct.
for another 3-year period.
Mhm.
So you would be paying severance. So the point is if you were going to non-renew the contract, that decision needs to be formally made,
120 days before
120
the
days,
expiration,
okay.
unless you don't care about paying severance.
correct?
Correct.
Right, we.
Right.
That's right.
Are you making a recommendation to us for one of these options or just for us to
Hmm.
decide?
So the no term is what you said. Okay.
Based on my experience, again, this is not so much of a legal, I'll throw on my HR hat. So the no duration is what I generally recommend because of this issue that I see. Again, if you have to give at least 4 months notice, that's 4 months that you have to continue to work together. And like I said, not oftentimes, but sometimes my client has come to me halfway through that period and say, this is not workable. The person is looking for another job. They're in and out of the office. They're burning their vacation. They're doing X, Y, and Z. They're not listening to me. And again, this is depersonalized. This has nothing to do with Valerie, but I'm just talking about my anecdotal experience. That those are the sort of issues that can happen.
True, but in that situation, if the executive director is not showing up anymore, you can decide, look, this is not working out. We'll pay you your last 3 months. And then you can go and we'll bring someone else in interim, because you can solve that problem if it becomes a problem.
I've seen that too, where you put the person on admin leave for 3 months, for the
Mhm.
90
get paid.
days or what have you. And
Or if you give notice, the executive director can say, okay, I'm leaving today. And they don't have to stay for the
They don't
last 4
have to
months.
stay for the last
You
4
can't make
months.
someone stay.
I mean, what's considered cause? Is it considered if someone's out looking for another job and not showing up for work, is that cause?
no, I mean, again, if they disappear, they go AWOL, that's one thing. But in the experience that I'm dealing with C-suite folks who are not disappearing. They're doing their job, but they're distracted, obviously. They're devastated that, they're not going to have a job and they're constantly in and out of the office, taking vacation. And, like I said, the employer comes to me and says, this is not workable. What are my options? And I said, your options are you can put the person on admin leave. So the person has severance anyway that way through admin leave. So again, that's anecdotal experience, but that's sort of how I look at it.
Yeah, and I've had a different experience because we just went through this with our city manager. And we're going through it as we speak with our city attorney who will not be on our payroll as of next month. And we paid on both severance and we're parting ways, not for cause, just because it's time. And we're going in a different direction.
Yeah.
And they worked to the very last day. They're, they were on, hopefully whoever's on this position, 25 and 27 years 32 and 25 respectively of years serving the city. And we've had just nothing but great transition. So I don't know.
I
I
would
have
make
the
a-
other side. So I have the other side. I have the other side, what you're experiencing.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
And these are city manager, city attorney, back to
Okay.
back. So I've had this in the last
Fine.
6 months.
That's rugged.
Yeah. I would make a motion to recommend to the governing board that we adopt the version that provides for a 3-year term auto renewing every 3 years.
That's option B, I think.
Yes. With the added
And
language.
did you
that
have the
clarifies-
120-day? Were you okay with that as
I'm okay
well?
with the 120. That's
Okay.
fine.
And with.
All right,
what-
we have
The language that clarifies that if the contract does not
Sure.
get renewed, there's no severance owed. Make sure there's no,
Written
Back
notice
down the
and
road.
renewal.
That language is not in your option, but
Correct.
that's fine. I'll insert that into the amendment.
Do you mind reiterating your motion?
my motion is that we recommend to the governing board that we adopt option B for the 3-year term that includes auto renewals after 3 years and a 120-day notice period for non-renewal, and add in language that if the contract expires without renewal, no severance is owed to the executive director. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
Second,
Okay, let's take a roll call vote. Ruth?
Christy Fox,
Yes.
Michael Napoleon,
Yes.
Yvette Drucker,
yes.
Maria Marino's excused, Chelsea Reed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make sure
Motion
we take care of
passes.
that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, to speak on behalf of our executive committee and our board, we do feel very thankful that we have the executive director that we have. I think the staff here also feels the same way. Having been here for almost 10 years, she definitely understands the culture. And I appreciate everyone working hard to make sure that the future of the TPA, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years down the line, will make sure it has protections that are in place now for the future executive directors as well as the board and our budget. So this seems to be kind of a nice, happy medium in the end. And I really appreciate Milton, you being here, and Paul as well. Thank you so much for your guidance and your counsel during this process. And thank you to our executive director for being so professional during all of this. I can't imagine how uncomfortable this could be. And you have done it with just impeccable professionalism at every turn. We appreciate it. And what an amazing executive committee. Thank you. With that, we're adjourned.